everybody. Welcome to another day of cooking. Today we are working through the Forks and Knives flavor book, and we are making a vegetarian vegan paella. So this one says Paella de Verduras, right? And I'm pretty excited about this. Paella is one of my favorite things. So I've never actually made a vegetarian version, but this one is chock full of nice chunky vegetables as well as butter beans, which butter beans are amazing. I just love them. So we'll get started. I have started already a pot of boiling. So this is supposed to steam some vegetables. I don't actually have a steamer basket, so I'm going to blanch my vegetables in a larger and then a pot for cooking everything else in. I've also done a lot of prep work, which is, again, how I make some of this happen in my life. So while I'm getting ready here, let me cut up my onion. So a lot of times people say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. So I went ahead while I had some time earlier today that wouldn't have been enough time to do anything else, but was enough time to prep some vegetables. So I prepped my broccoli and I cut up summer squash into little diced pieces, and I diced all my peppers. I drained my beans and my tomatoes. I peeled my garlic so that when I would come to this moment, I would be ready to go. I could cook a little faster. I wouldn't have to spend too much time just sitting around. So just another note, this recipe calls for 12 ounces, I think, of trumpet mushrooms. I had some button mushrooms on hand. Turns out they were really bad. So I went and pulled out some shiitake mushrooms that were dried. I soaked them while I was gone at a meeting. Came back, drained them, chopped them up. So these are going to go in. I got to tell you, I'm not a fan of the smell of the mushroom when I walked in the door and it's been soaking in the water. But mushrooms are known to take on the flavor of whatever you're cooking, which is just great. So I am hopeful that they will be a reasonable substitute in the end. So what I'm doing right now is cutting up a large onion. I tend to make double batches so that my family has food for lunch the next day. So I'm using a large onion instead of one medium onion and calling that good. The recipe also calls for 3 cloves of garlic. So I'm using 6 cloves of garlic. Now, I was thinking about this the other day because I made some hummus and I was peeling some garlic, and it occurred to me, like, there are times when I just don't have the wherewithal to peel garlic and get out a mincer and deal with it. And if that's the kind of day I'm having, I have garlic powder in the cupboard. So 1 clove of garlic, it tends to be equivalent to a teaspoon of garlic powder. So, and then I have people that don't like garlic at all, so then they don't add it. It's kind of a sad thing in my world because I love garlic, but so I'm going to go ahead and mince the garlic in. And it tends to be the first step of all recipes, right? Your base somehow has something to do with sauteing garlic, onion, celery, carrot. Tends to be the base of things. Now this is kind of funny. This particular recipe says not to add any water to the pot because the mushrooms will release liquid, and that will be enough. I'm not sure if I'm going to find that to be true. I may just add a little bit of water just to make sure my things don't stick, because I once burned the bottom of this pot. So it doesn't work as well as it used to before we had to scrub it to death from my burning the pot. And that's kind of life, I find. Like, if you do enough cooking, you'll make a mistake. I've made my share of mistakes. I know myself. So I have no, I wonder if I make mistakes. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of water there. And I'm going to give this stuff a stir. Another thing that I did ahead of time, and I will also tell you, this is a step I am not above skipping. I soaked my rice while I was out for that same meeting. So it says to soak it for 20 minutes. I was gone for 2 hours. That feels like a fine reality for me to say, like, yeah, I'm going to be gone and I'm going to go ahead and soak this rice. But I often don't. I know it's the way to go. I know people usually do. So when I drained my rice, I drained it in a fine mesh colander. I actually bought a set of these. I think there's like 3 or 4, and they get smaller. And then the rice slid right out of this, which would be different than if you go for a wider colander. So let's see here. This onion, garlic, mushroom mixture is meant to get those onions translucent. That's usually the goal. And this is going to become a big flavor base for your food. What's going to come next is the rice, the tomatoes, the bell pepper, and the spices. So you're going to add yet another layer. And I'm just going to share with you this spice mix while that's cooking. So I've gone and put it all together for fastness, but there's smoked paprika in here, parsley, salt, and saffron. Saffron can be a bit pricey, especially if you just go to a regular grocery store. I got mine in bulk, so it wasn't as pricey. But like it costs for an 1/8 teaspoon of saffron, and then they come in these little threads. So I actually use pinches of saffron when I'm measuring like 1/8. Okay, so a pinch, that's what I'm going to do. A little goes a long way. It adds a nice coloring. It's actually a smoked paprika, which may be of interest to you. And that'll go in. It's going to release some of the flavors in there a little bit. So I'll let that add itself to the mix, stir it around. Usually when they're talking about letting spices get aromatic, you're talking about 30 seconds. Ooh, that's a big win. You're talking about 30 seconds, not a whole lot. It's not a big deal. If you're doing a lot, maybe a minute. The aroma, it's so wonderful. So I've cut up my tomato, or sorry, this is red pepper, so that can go in as well. And then I've pre-drained my tomatoes. They do have a little bit, like, if I really wanted to be anal about it, what I would do is run them through a colander, a strainer. But I wasn't anal, I just turned it upside down and let some of the juices flow out. So there'll be a little bit of juice in here, but when we add our rice, that rice is going to need to soak up some juice as it is. So that goes in, and amazingly, like, it doesn't call for the beans to go in yet, and part of the reason for that is your beans will continue to get softer as they cook, so they can afford to wait a little bit. Rice. Okay, so the recipe called for a cup of short grain rice. I did 3 cups. Again, I've got a lot of kids. Vegetables are a bit of a challenge for them. I'm trying to work with them. So I'm going to add in 3 cups of rice. It's going to be just great. It's going to give us leftovers. It smells so good in here. We have kids of Portuguese descent in our house. They love rice. I didn't grow up eating a lot of rice. It wasn't a thing that was often served. And so rice was something I learned about more as I got older. But it's really good. And sometimes people even saute the rice before they add water. That's sort of kind of happening here a little bit. So I'm kind of getting everything together. And you can see that pot's getting full already. Also, you can see that my water is boiling. So I'm going to blanch these vegetables. My green beans are already blanched. If they weren't, you'd be adding those to a steamer basket or to the blanching first. But broccoli and especially summer squash does not need a lot of time to cook. And if you let it cook too much, it's just going to disappear. It's going to melt into your food. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. I'm not going to blanch these for longer than 2 minutes, but I'll start with a minute. And I'm even going to set the timer so I don't forget. Give those a quick stir. And I'm pretty sure I need to add water to this other one. Combine the ingredients, 5 to 7 minutes, and then add the water. Okay, so I'm well within the range of making that work. And actually, this will probably be, I'll probably take a little break because this will need to cook. The rice will need to cook for a while. And you may wonder, like, a woman who's doing so much cooking, why does she not have a steamer basket if her stuff calls for that? I think the reality is my kitchen is full. All my pantries are full. we now sort of have a rule in our house that if you want to add something, something has to go away. We just don't have any more space. So that's kind of the deal. That's where we're at. I'm going to get my colander ready. As I talk to you about no space, I drop things. So time off. I'm going to turn off this burner because it's my rapid boil burner. And I'm just going to take this and let that water stop cooking it. And those can just wait there. I don't need to do anything else with them. What I can do though is prep the water that's going to go in here. So it calls for 2 cups. That means for me, I need 4 cups of water. And at this point, you're so close, right? So I've got my green beans. I had already steamed these and chopped them up. If I was just serving a grown-up group, I wouldn't cut them into these small little pieces like I did. I cut them into these small pieces for the sake of kids. So you can tailor. All the stuff in here is diced. That's really for the sake of even cooking. Everything, when it's about the same size, cooks about the same rate. So this is ready enough. I'm going to go ahead and stick that 4 cups of water in. And I'm assuming that this rice is going to soak up a ton of the liquid, which is why we needed to pre-cook our vegetables. Also, because that rice needs time to cook, you wouldn't want to put those other vegetables in while it's cooking the rice. You would just have really gross, mushy vegetables. However, if you're too busy and you can't imagine a world where you just created broccoli florets and diced your zucchini and cut up your green beans, buy it frozen, right? Frozen is the next best thing to fresh. And so if you're busy, there's chopped broccoli, there's broccoli florets, there's chopped zucchini. You might get zucchini and summer squash in the same one. Who cares? There's even frozen pepper onion mixes. So if you just feel like it would break you to have to do all that, buy the ingredients frozen, throw them all together. You know, there's microwavable rice even, or you could throw your rice in a rice cooker and then put all the parts together after that. But this, at this point, it says to let it cook for 50 minutes. So after all those have gone in, you're going to bring it to a boil, and then it's going to go to medium-low. Once it's come up to that boil, you're going to cover it, which is going to keep all that water cooking that rice. And it says simmer for about 50 minutes until the rice is tender and the liquid is absorbed. So I'm going to take a break for now, let this do its thing, and then I will come back and see you in a little while. Bye-bye. Okay, so I have taken the lid off. Let's see if I can give you just a little picture of this. So it's so beautiful, right? This tones of red. The rice is reasonably soft now, and we're really almost done at this point. So it said 50 minutes. I think I've been at it like 40. I added an extra 2 cups of water because as I was thinking, I remembered like, oh, right, I added an extra cup of rice. Extra cup of rice means 2 more cups of water. So all that happens now, those green beans that are pre-cooked and ready to go, my butter beans. So these are, I'm actually going to, in case you've never seen one before, and these are smaller than other brands that I buy, but this is a butter bean. It almost looks like a white lima bean. And I think it's called a butter bean because its texture is so velvety smooth, so amazing. So I had gone ahead and drained these ahead of time so I wouldn't have to do that when we were together. And then all that broccoli and summer squash is going to go right in. So this is, the protein is found in your beans. That's a really important thing when you're putting together vegetarian meals, that you get the right proportions of things. And then all these vegetables, you have mushrooms, onion, garlic, broccoli, green beans, and summer squash. So beautiful. And red peppers. So I'm going to mix all of that together, and this recipe at this point is done. In fact, I'm going to turn off my burner because I don't want the rice to stick to the bottom. So this is a double batch, keep in mind, and with some things, like I don't get that picky about, I'm not concerned did I get too many vegetables, only that I get enough. So on occasion, I might have just a little bit of some vegetable left. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in. I'm not even going to worry about something like that. So this goes all together, and the great thing is, once again, my family has to eat in shifts. Some of us eating early, some of us eating at a normal time, and then I want stuff for lunches. So in the mornings with something like this will get transferred to some sort of, temporary container, and in the morning I'll heat it up by the bowl, stick it in a thermos, and people have a hot lunch for lunch that is really, like, I know where it came from, I know what's in it, I feel really good about it. On the last little piece, I have cut up lemon wedges here. I have de-seeded them ahead of time because I don't like the seeds. So this is a vegetarian paella. I'm very excited about it. A little note, there's cayenne pepper in the spices that I had thrown in earlier. I never put as much cayenne pepper in as it says. I think it even called for a small amount, like an eighth. I usually go dot, like maybe 3 shakes, and then I'm done because cayenne pepper can be a little strong for the littles. So this is it. I can cover this up. I can move on with my day. In terms of what I did with that time that I had, I did some dishes. I did some work on the computer. I put my toddler down for a nap. So there's all these things that you can kind of do. Sometimes you think like, oh, well, it's going to take 50 minutes. So if I didn't have time to make this coming home from work, for instance, I might make it the night before and then just heat it up by the bowl the next day. Very flexible that way. So it's really up to you in terms of how you go ahead and make these kinds of things happen. When I was doing a long commute, it could be an hour to 2 hour commute home. I was telling somebody just today, the best I had energy for was like cheese and bean quesadillas. So it has taken me a while to learn, how do I put my life together in a way where I feel like I have the energy for this? The answer is really prepping ahead of time. Prepping my food ahead of time, knowing what I'm going to make ahead of time, planning when I'm going to get my groceries. That's what's really allowed me to do all this. So thanks so much for being with me, and I will see you again later. Bye-bye.